Hello, my name is Larry Granger, and on the line with me is Jo Fay from Colorado and David Nichols from Sherwood Park. Mary Jo is going to walk us through this presentation, and are you there, Mary Jo?
I am. Okay, well, Larry Granger has contacted me because as a grandfather who's been affected by the difficult situation through the legal systems and court systems when divorces occurred in your life, he's also been involved with Jerry and David, who have also been directly firsthand affected by the difficult people that can come along when you find yourself in the middle of a divorce and the legal system and all the other systems surrounding that. So they've contacted me to help explain briefly dealing with difficult people and dealing with the court system and how we can help educate the court system, the healthcare system, the public system about difficult people and the toll they take on all of those of us involved, financially as well as emotionally. So Larry's put together a great program here, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through some of the highlights. I am an expert in difficult people. I write books about the subject. I consult with people about the subject. And difficult people are everywhere. They are not just, your difficult boss or the neighbor next door. They can be people that at one point were your intimate partners and who are not now your intimate partners. And suddenly the Dr. Jekyll has turned to Mr. Hyde and things like that happen. So the word narcissism I want to bring up too so that you're very familiar with that. Narcissistic people are very egotistical and controlling people. They frequently feel that rules don't apply to them. They never seem to be happy no matter what you do. And they rarely have any empathy or compassion towards others, and yet if you step on their toes, the world seems to come crashing in around them, and they feel more slighted than most people. And they may have started out perfectly and changed dramatically along the way. So these are the people that we're going to be talking about specifically today. And Larry, if you want to go to the third slide, where we can talk about how you sort of put this together in the court system. And you have this color-coded, Larry. Do you want to remind us what the color coding is about?
The pink really is destructive or bad, and the green is, I'm going to just try and change that to a checkpoint. The green is constructive and good things that you can do. So that's basically it. We're going to go through each quadrant one at a time and list the bad things or destructive things, and then we're going to follow through with the green and constructive, what can be done.
And basically, when Larry came to me, what I was hearing was a very frustrated person who had been in the legal system and someone who was convinced that the legal system was out to get him. And I think that's a very common feeling when people get drawn into this kind of a system where we have very little feeling of control and no knowledge about how the system works or how to work with it well. And what I suggested was that instead of attacking the legal system and the psychology system and all of those people who are involved in this, that we'd go a whole lot farther and a whole lot faster by helping people understand the intricacies of the difficult people that are out there, because most of us are fooled very often by difficult people, and we get caught up in it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling negative prophecy. So he's kind of put down here in very specific terms how things have been working and not necessarily well. For example, the adversarial approach to litigation, we unknowingly and unconsciously almost walk into a setup for a narcissistic, difficult person to come in and just rabble-rouse and point fingers and accuse, and it just seems to fester and grow and get worse. So instead of that, and instead of being sucked into that destructive type of situation, we need to become informed and educate the respondent, the person who's caught up in this trap, as well as the legal people behind the decision-making power. I spoke to a judicial group here in Denver about difficult people a couple of years ago, and they absolutely, although they deal with these people every single day, really didn't understand what makes difficult people tick, nor how difficult people can learn to manipulate the system to their advantage, which ends up taking the respondent or the defendant or whatever the particular label is we want to give that person who's kind of stuck in the middle of being pressured from both sides. It just absolutely drives them into a psychological and emotional turmoil. And really, if the kids are the ones in the middle of all of this, they tend to be the ones that lose, but the court system may be missing out on that piece of the pie simply by not understanding what makes difficult people to work. So we are looking at a victim who gets caught in the crossfires of all of this. They don't have the education. They don't have the tools. Their self-esteem is usually in the crapper by this point. And they walk into the legal system and they look like they're the idiot or the unhealthy one to begin with. And this becomes a vicious cycle as it goes further and further. And the respondent, as Larry has checked here, becomes isolated and feels that they have no support and they don't know how to even move forward. The negative narcissistic person tends to go at the offensive line, knocking everybody over, and we're also off kilter because of it, that it's very difficult to respond unless you know what to expect coming down the pike at you. So what our goal is today is to really get people healthy, to get people educated, to help the legal system people, the psychological system people who understand narcissism very well for the most part, but may still be very well fooled by the great acting ability of difficult people. So even psychology people can be fooled by the great persona that's put off by some of these difficult people. So as Lily's pointed out here in the pink boxes, we have productivity can go in the tank, absenteeism can increase, health issues, physical health, emotional health, all the stress and all of those things that come along with people being under the gun from very difficult people that are adding stress in ways that really, if we were all healthy, we wouldn't be dealing with. And he's put together a pretty good little graph here. Or a low self-esteem person, you can look at the zero end of the scale, and the narcissistic characteristics at a 100% on the scale. And a balanced individual has a little bit of everything and should be better able to handle all these. Unfortunately, many times when we get into these big emotional roller coasters of a divorce situation where tempers flare and we say things we can't take back, and people go into positions of power hoping that they win, and it's got to be I win or you win, and there's not compromise looked at as the goal of the outcome. Usually one person ends up suffering on a huge basis, and it can cost huge amounts of dollars in legal fees and health fees and psychology fees, and that's what we're trying to get more education out here about so that we can clear up everybody's dollars and cents in emotional health and physical health and really help the children in the long run come out with the best decisions in the courtroom. Are we covering what you were hoping we were covering, Larry?
Perfect. That sounds real good.
Okay. So the general public, as Larry's pointed out here, survives and maintains mental stability by not getting involved. If we keep our heads buried in the sand, we don't really have to know what's going on that's out there that's not doing us any favors. And I hate to use this extreme example because it seems too extreme, but if we look back to the days of Hitler came to power as a very charismatic young man with a great vision, and people started following him, not really even realizing where he was taking them. And he's certainly the most extreme example of a narcissistic personality disordered person. But there is kind of a scale of narcissism as well, with 0 to 10 being my scale, 0 being a healthy narcissistic person. And that person would be someone who sets goals, reaches towards them. If they falter, if they fail, they pick themselves back up, they go forward again. But they still have empathy and compassion for other people. On the 10 level is Hitler, who mows everybody over, has no compassion or empathy for other people. The rules don't apply to them. They are godlike in their own mind. And in between 0 and 10 are a huge number of narcissistic traits, and many of us have some of these traits. But the biggest problem is that psychology will frequently only label someone at extreme with a narcissistic personality disorder when perhaps that person has traits on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe in the level of 2 or 3 or 4, but the person they are involved with has enough emotional baggage they bring to the table that when you mix those two people, the emotional and physical unhealth that results is tragic. It can be catastrophic. So I advise people to be very conscious that we don't have to have a psychological diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder to cause a lot of pain and destruction along the way to a variety and number of people. So that's where we see people in the emergency rooms. We see huge amounts of money being spent on antidepressants, on psychological care, on stomach ulcers, on a whole variety of things because the stress and pressure involved in these types of environments are absolutely horribly destructive. So we do end up with families being destroyed. We put the kids involved in the middle as pawns, and the whole thing just gets way out of hand. And much of it could be better regulated if we just had a better understanding of how these people work. What else have we got here, Larry? So he's put together this whole chart to help you understand. Again, the pink things are non-productive behaviors that we have tended to fall prey to or become in the habit of, blaming judges, for example, or blaming psychiatrists or whatever, when in fact many of those people simply have not known about this particular personality behavior. Not that psychiatrists do not understand it. They certainly are very well versed in it. But sometimes the person that's a difficult person has become such a great actor and has so much charisma that they can fool everybody around them. And then the respondent or the victim in this situation absolutely looks like the idiot. Larry's put on here in the green, watch the Gaslight movie. This is an excellent movie. It's from 1944, 40 years before the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. And while this movie has a criminal intent to it, it's a great learning tool to look at how manipulative people can manipulate people, and from a third-party position. So you can start to see how some of the people that come into the courtrooms may actually look like the crazy ones, when it may in fact be reverse that's going on. The crazy one is such a great actor and has so much charm and charisma, just as Adolf Hitler did, that he can convince everybody around him that he or she, walks on water, and the other person involved is an absolute nut. So it's you need to learn to have your radar up, and you need to look past some of the charisma and the power and the what appears to be healthy self-esteem person, who really in fact can be very destructive in the long run and cost us all huge amounts of money and a whole lot of pain. So our goal is to educate people. The narcissistic characteristics are definitely many. There are 9 that qualify someone to have narcissistic personality disorder, out of which 5 only need to be met. But that's, again, for a psychiatrist to diagnose. And many people will never fit that diagnosis, but many will have a whole lot of personality characteristics and behaviors that are just highly destructive. And it's helping us learn to differentiate those personalities, those that seem to be even more charismatic and more volatile seem to stir up the litigation and stir up the courts and make everything so much bigger than it needs to be. So if we can get our legal people, the attorneys, the judges, to be aware of this type of issue, to start looking past the surface issue, to start asking more questions that can come back and really balance the tables more about, which people are really stirring up this pot, which people are really the victims in here, despite what the external appearance may look like. We may be getting more of a healthy answer. And truly, in getting our victims, our respondents, to become more healthy and to have better self-esteem and to understand the person they're dealing with as well, gets them back on the health meter in a place that's more balanced. And that's, again, going to be providing a better health environment for the children as well. What else did we have to cover, Larry?
I was just going to talk a little bit about building the self-esteem up. I've been in contact with Michael Lozier quite a bit over the last year. I've taken his course 3 times. He has written a book called The Law of Attraction. It's attracting more of what you want, and that was one of the goals that we had in the opening slide that I put on. So we're hoping that we can get him to do his course online in this live meeting format. We will be doing that later on in September or so. So I've talked to Michael's assistant, and we'll be getting back to you on that, what kind of programs that we can put together to put people into the balanced position here so that we get people into balance.
And I think, Larry, a couple of the things that I have put out for people is a variety of workshops. I have a book called When Your Perfect Partner Goes Perfectly Wrong, and another one called Get Out of Your Box, which is, I define a box, B-O-X-X, as a behavioral pattern that keeps people stuck. And so it might be the box of your past, or the box of the expectations of other people, or the box of narcissism, which is being held captive by someone else and their own situation. So there's a variety of ways to get people healthy. And however it seems to work best for each person is certainly what I recommend. You know, maybe you're a workshop person, maybe you're a audio tape person, maybe you're a one-on-one consultation person. Whatever works for each individual is certainly what they need to choose to see what's going to help get them on task and on track the best. But yeah, the emotional health and turmoil that comes along with being stuck with these types of people is just vastly destructive. I mean, suicidal things come into play, years of depression. And the bottom line is that with our children, unfortunately, when they are raised in a home where one parent is a difficult parent, a narcissistic parent, they learn to become that way themselves. So we are perpetuating the cycle of unhealthy behavior. So it's certainly crucial to our future generations that we recognize this personality. We're cautious where we assign our children to their custody issues, and getting help to the people that are stuck in the respondent spot or the victim spot so that they can become the healthiest that they can, then gives our children at least one parent to look at as a healthy parent to emulate. And then as they compare the difficult parent and the healthy parent, they at least have a guide for how they can evolve themselves and make choices themselves for their partners when they grow up. So it's really important for our children's sake, not just one particular custody issue. This is important for the evolution of our children by changing the tide of what we are allowing and what we are teaching and what we are demonstrating as normal, that it's not normal, that we want to redirect the education and the health and the emotional health of everybody involved to get the healthiest kids out of this situation as well.
Are you still there, Mary Jo?
I'm still there. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I was just going to move on to the next slide. And you've already touched on that. It's imperative that we educate the judges and the people in the legal system.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think that we have had so many people appear before our legal system, and these people appear very charismatic, very under control, very calm and cool as a cucumber, and then we're looking at the other person, the other party of the domestic situation, and they look like an emotional wreck. And so it's educating our lawyers, our judges, whoever else is involved in these, the social workers, the child advocates. Again, as I said, I spoke with a couple of groups here in Denver, and these are full-time people who are involved in this situation day to day. And as I went through the intricacies of what makes narcissistic people tick, they were all absolutely shocked, just shocked. Had never heard it put like that before, and were, starting to second-guess some of the decisions that they had been making in court, because what they were seeing was an outside persona, an external acting ability. And there are ways to actually learn to question people that will sort of trigger their real underneath response, and to do some major investigating once you understand how the difficult people work. is what takes a little bit of time, but in the long run will have the better outcome to really reveal who the people are that are on the side of the health of the children involved, and who those are that are going to end up taking them down the wrong path. So certainly a big goal I know of yours, Larry, and I've been invited through your work to do this, is to help in whatever way we can to educate and put on some programs for the lawyers, for the judges, for the social workers, for the child advocates, whatever the terminology is that you use in your legal system, to help them better see what's going on underneath the superficial facade that is fooling a whole lot of people in this setting.
So we're just going to tick off some of the good things this weekend. That Gaslight movie is an excellent movie. I've watched it I don't know how many times now. And we'll just see how many tick marks we get in here. Here's another thing that people can do. I have posted, Mary Jo did a presentation for us back, 6 months ago or so, and I have posted that on a website for people to look at. You can go to www.newellsolutions.com, Difficult People, WMV, and see that presentation. So our goal, I guess, is to get people into the balanced position, give them courage, educate them. Here's one that I find quite astonishing, like and it's just human nature that the public doesn't want to get involved in a contentious situation. But I think we can change the mindset of the public if we let them know that they're out there to support the respondent. We're going at this with a positive attitude rather than a negative attitude. We're in there.
Right, exactly.
We're going in there to assist the legal system, the politicians, and that's our goal. So I'll just put this last slide up and reread it again. Mary Jo does an excellent job about dealing with difficult people. We've had many discussions, and she seems to have an answer for just about everything that pops up, and I find that she's been very helpful. And like I said,
and difficult people, are in our workplace as well as in our legal system, and they cost us huge amounts of money everywhere. So if you tend to find that you are surrounded by them, in part you are a common denominator, and allowing them to have their way with you is something that you can change as well by learning how you tick and how you tick in relation to them. Most of us are involved in difficult relationships because at some point in our early lives we were surrounded by them, and that's what we considered were normal. Whether we liked it or not, we considered it was normal, and we didn't do anything different. So we all have the ability to change our course in life, and my website is helpfromsurvivors.com, which can bring you into learning more about how you can work on yourself to insulate yourself towards being the victim of difficult people as well. So there's a whole gamut of how you can utilize this information to help yourself in your personal life, in your work life, in this legal system, and the mess that we all end up with when the divorce type of things come along and we end up in court. So, come up with whatever issues you'd like to have solved, and we can start a new path to working on solving those as well.
Okay, I think this was going to end up being a short introduction, and it ended up a little more than that, so we'll cut it off here. And then if you want to stay on the line, Mary Jo, we'll do a little more talking after.
All right, very good.